Hey guys, how's it going? It's X666X Iron Maiden. Today we'll be checking out another video from Simple History. This is the Maus Super Heavy Tank. Alright, so I am only slightly familiar with the Maus. Even though I was in the Armored Corps and the Canadian Armed Forces, we only would basically need to know what certain tanks look like. Didn't really jump into it too heavy on other ones, and especially because this tank doesn't exist anymore. It's no longer in combat for a long time. We didn't really go into it, and the most I've learned from this is actually from the video game World of Tanks. I used to play it a lot about 3 years ago, and that's about the most I know about it is from that game. Pretty sure this video is actually sponsored by War Thunder, which is basically the competitor to World of Tanks. I guess at the time there were like the two games going at it. Probably still are. I'm not sure. I don't follow either of them anymore. But I'm glad to be doing this video because I was always interested to know more about this massive tank. So let's jump in and check it out.
Thank you to the realistic free-to-play online game War Thunder for sponsoring this Simple History
let's
episode.
Jump ahead a little. Jump ahead
Super
there.
Heavy Tank. The Panzerkampfwagen 8 Maus was a super heavy tank designed by the German forces during the Second World War. This was the heaviest tank ever built in human history. By the end of 1944, only 2 prototypes were completed, so the Maus never actually saw action in battle. The development of this super tank was primarily connected with Hitler's obsession to surpass the Allies in developing heavy tanks, especially the Soviets.
Heavy artillery.
The task of designing a tank bigger and more powerful than any other was given to the leading German tank constructor, Ferdinand Porsche. In June 1942, Porsche presented Hitler with the idea of the VK100.01 Type 205 tank, which the Führer approved.
Not surprised.
This tank was to be 150 tons and was intended to use either a 150mm or a 128mm gun, with an additional 75mm gun and an MG-34 machine gun. The production of the tank hull, turret, and armament was assigned to Krupp, while the assembly was to be constructed in the Alcat factory. At the time, the project was officially named the Mammoth, but it was eventually changed to Maus, or Maus. On May 1, 1943, Hitler was presented with a wooden mock-up of the future tank. As he was pleased with what he saw, he ordered a run of 150 Maus tanks for production. Although he ordered the version with the 128mm gun and coaxial 75mm gun, he wanted future models to be armed with the more powerful 150mm gun. The outcome of the final blueprints were 10.1 meters or 33.13 feet long, 3.67 meters or 12 feet wide, and 3.63 meters or 11.9 feet high, and it weighed almost 190 tons.
Oh my god.
The crew was to consist of 6 men, a commander, gunner, 2 loaders, a driver, and a radio operator. The Maus's armor was very impressive. The turret had a thickness of 220mm or 8.7 inches at the front, and 200mm or 7.9 inches thick on its sides and rear. The hull thickness was 200mm or 7.9 inches at the front, and 180 or 7.1 inches on the side.
Man.
The armament of the tank was equally impressive. The main armament was the 128mm KWK-44 gun. With such a gun, the Maus would be capable of eliminating almost any Allied tank within the range of 3,500 meters. The secondary coaxial armament was the 75mm KWK-44 gun. In addition, the turret was equipped with a 7.92mm MG-34 machine gun for close combat.
That's obviously
Such a heavy tank demanded a powerful engine to move it. Porsche's intention was to use the petrol-electric drive they had used before on their version of the Tiger tank. The petrol engine would operate the electric generator that drove the 24 wheels that each track had. The projected speed of the tank with such an engine was 20 kilometers per hour, or 12 miles per hour. The engine system was so huge that it took 2/3 of the entire hull and caused the turret to be put at the rear end. With this design, the driver and radio operator seated in the hull were completely cut off from the turret crew. The Maus's tracks were proportional to the overall size of the tank in order to give it good mobility. They were 1.1 meters wide, or 3.6 feet, and they were supported by a suspension system on each of the wheels. As the size of the tank was its prime feature, it was also its greatest drawback. With a staggering total weight of 188 tons,
Wow.
its mobility was under great question, and that was the
Yeah.
main reason why German commanders were not fond of
Wet
the
terrain
concept.
and stuff would just be nuts.
With a low speed and a high silhouette, the Maus tank was a big target, especially for the Air Force. The drawbacks of the entire Maus concept seem to have been obvious to the HWA, the German weapons agency, who protested against the Maus, stating that it didn't need such a tank,
Right from the
and they
start.
just couldn't formulate a tactical plan for it. With such limited mobility, the Maus couldn't serve as a tank hunter, but it could work as a mobile fortress. Ultimately, the Army canceled the order for 150 Maus tanks in October 1943. In the next month, Hitler ordered the development of the Maus to be ceased, and he believed resources could be better used for other projects. Authorities, however, allowed Porsche to continue building their prototypes. The first prototype, the V1, was produced in December 1943. Although it had no turret, it was equipped with a dummy turret to simulate the weight for tests. The V1 had a 1,080 horsepower Daimler-Benz MB509 V12 gasoline engine, which produced a speed of only 13 kilometers per hour or 8 miles per hour. Tests showed that the weight of the tank proved to be a great obstacle. Constructors also realized that the weight of 188 tons meant that there was no bridge in Europe that the Maus could cross without destroying.
Yeah, no.
To overcome this problem, the V1 was equipped with a huge snorkel that allowed it to be submerged to the depth of 8 meters in order to cross rivers. The
That's
second
nuts.
prototype, the V2, came in mid-1944 and was substantially different from the V1. This version had a real turret installed. The engine was replaced with a 1,200 horsepower Daimler-Benz MB517 diesel engine. The V2 had an advanced electric steering system and a new Skoda gear system. All these elements, however, showed only slight improvements.
Well, yeah, it's just too heavy.
Prototype tests were being performed at Kummersdorf, near the Böblingen Porsche proving grounds. Tests were marked by frequent engine failures and production delays caused by Allied bombings. Finally, in August 1944, Krupp was ordered to cancel the production of the Maus hulls and to scrap the ones already produced. This was the official end of the Maus tank project. When the Red Army units approached the Kummersdorf testing grounds in April 1945, the Germans managed to destroy the V2 prototype. The Soviets then took the V1 hull and mounted the V2 turret on top of it in order to conduct tests of their own. Today, this tank stands exhibited at the Kubinka Tank Museum.
Nice. I didn't know that they still had one that existed.
Thank you to War Thunder for
I'm gonna cut
sponsoring
that out
this
there. I would have assumed that it would have got destroyed, so that's completely to the point where they didn't get to save it. So that's cool that they actually put it together. That I didn't know. I also actually thought this thing got to at least see combat once, so now I know it didn't. But it makes sense after explaining everything. I mean, the thing, if it rained and it was driving over muddy terrain, I feel like it would get stuck no matter what. Like tanks get stuck nowadays. The Leopard 2 main battle tank, the Canadian forces use, Germany uses it, a bunch of other countries use them. Even the A6 version, Leopard 2 A6, which is one of the newer ones, they get stuck. They get stuck in mud. It doesn't seem like a vehicle like that would get stuck. They're powerful, but they're heavy. They don't probably get stuck as easy as that does, but they do get stuck. So I can't even imagine how many times that thing would have got stuck. And it was a prototype, so yeah, I was going to get... Anyway, basically, it sounds like, in general, the German army kept wanting to make these super huge things and just didn't, at the time, because it hadn't really been an experience yet. They basically had to do it to learn it. So the bigger the target, when air superiority is a huge thing in this time of combat, just easier to hit. Like basically, it doesn't end up helping you in the end. It's a big target. You imagine if they would have put more into making stealth tanks and stuff back then, how big of a difference that could have made on the war if they would have focused it in a different direction. With all the resources Germany had then, that would be nuts. That could have made the war way harder if Germany would have went in a different direction with their building capabilities instead of trying to build these monsters for no reason. Because in the end, they were all no reason. None of them did anything. Same thing with the Gustav railgun that we checked out, the Behemoth. It's just useless. It's just huge, and it's just not practical. But yeah, this is still an impressive tank to actually... They actually made the prototype, and that's still impressive that they tried it. But again, it's just useless. The turret on it's actually still bigger than most main battle tanks have nowadays with the technology we have now. I'm going to look this up right quick. Just give me 2 seconds. I'm going to again go with the Leopard. The only reason I continue to mention the Leopard is because it's the one tank that I am familiar with from my my time in the Canadian Forces. It's what we have. The gun is what I am interested in. It's usually equipped. I'm not sure if there's a bigger one now. Oh, hold on. We have a Leopard 2A7 now, which apparently, just checking this up, I had no idea about this, by the way. When did this come into effect here? Okay, so this would have been 2014 when those came out. Most of these are equipped with a 120 millimeter gun. So even though they went with the smaller gun for the Maus, it was still bigger than what a Leopard 2 main battle tank uses most of the time nowadays on in combat, which is crazy. It's crazy. Excuse me again. It can also be equipped with 105 mil on the Leopard 2, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. They probably don't even use the 105 on it anymore if they did use it before. I'm just trying to remember. So that's just a comparison to a nowadays tank. Like it's not the Leopard 2 isn't the biggest tank, but it is one of the big main battle tanks that you hear about, and it only has a 120 mil gun. And it's crazy. That's just crazy, man. This tank was crazy. The Maus. You got to give it that, even though it was basically useless. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed checking this one out with me. If you did, make sure you hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to see more from me. I'm also on Patreon if you'd like to support the channel. And as always, you guys have a good one. I'll catch you later.